Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Good morning, good morning. This is Andrea Simantov, and you are listening to Pull Up a Chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Okay, a little bit of a technical glitch this morning, but we're going to fix it, and I am with you. Very excited. Today is Thursday morning here in Jerusalem, Wednesday night, if you are listening to the west of us. And tonight begins the holiday of Shavuous. In the rest of the world outside of Israel, Shavuos is indeed 2 days, but here in Israel it is 1 day. So we're going to go right into Shabbos. And for many of us who grew up in a secular fashion or grew up not Jewish, not yet Jewish or not yet observant, Shavuos was one of those kind of blank holidays that we didn't really know very much about. Nevertheless, I'm just watching this computer here. Nevertheless, it's very exciting. This is the time on the calendar when we received the Torah. We were given the Torah at the foot of Sinai. This is the holiday that screams, you babies are a nation. So we're going to talk only about Shavuos today. That is why it's a huge experiment for me, because I have decided to keep our airways this morning clear of politics, clear of smarm, only keeping it holy. We're receiving our Torah together, and we're going into Shabbos. Okay, as we are indeed coming out of, for many of us, the coronavirus issue. So I don't know about you, but I saw my grandchildren this week for the first time in 2 months, and I thought to myself, who are we as parents, as grandparents? Who are we if not teachers? Well, that is what Shavuos is all about. Our learning, our growing, our being teachers, indeed emulating what it is to be rather than do. This is Andrea Simantov. Pull up a chair. We have a lot to talk about on the other side.
Israel is located in one of the most volatile areas in the world. Israel is an island of stability in a sea of war and unrest. In the midst of this turmoil, Israel stands out as a beacon of order and human progress. Each week we update you on what's happening in this, the Jewish state, a true light unto the nations. This is Jay Shapiro. Join me every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Be biblical.
Be beautiful.
Wear your crown.
Wrapping is my crown.
Do what married Jewish women have been doing for thousands of years. Celebrate the art of head wrapping. I'm Andrea Grinberg from Rapunzel.com. We have beautiful scarves, stunning accessories, scarves for faith, scarves for healing, and scarves for fun. Rapunzel.com. That's Rapunzel with a W. Or click on our banner on the Israel News Talk Radio homepage.
Rapunzel.com. Beautiful scarves, stunning accessories paired with tutorials, support, and a vibrant community to give you everything you need to start and perfect your head covering journey.
Don't forget, join the Rapunzel community group on Facebook to see, learn, and share your beautiful wraps. That's Rapunzel with a W on Facebook.
I love Rapunzel.
I love Rapunzel.
I love Rapunzel.
Get 10% off your purchase with promo code RADIO. Go now to Rapunzel.com.
And we're back. Andrea Simantov, pull up a chair on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Shavuos.com. Okay, I am having, I think my computer was actually brought down from Sinai. Okay, so tonight begins Shavuos. Shavuos is, it's a very difficult holiday to capture emotionally because you know what? We're used to these 8-day holidays, these holidays where we have all these kinds of meals, and then what we call wait, I'm turning on the light here because I can't find my computer. You know, friends, we like to keep the show very real. Okay, it's a difficult holiday to capture. Many of us didn't even know about it. So, before we even talk about how important it is, we have to look at it ourselves, that the Torah itself is actually, we know that it's a blueprint of life. It's a blueprint how to conduct ourselves. Well, Shavuos is actually an agricultural holiday. Anybody who's been in the supermarkets lately knows the fruits are turning great. The avocados are just so sweet and edible. The salads, the peaches, the grapes, it's all coming out. So by just calculating it on the calendar, we have to figure out that the holiday is actually, it's a time where we're granted the Torah to the Jewish people. Now, in light of this association, a lot of the customs that come about for Shavuos to mark the holiday, one of the most prevalent ones is, of course, the eating of dairy foods. Because, and of course, there are a lot of different views on it, but one of the reasons we have the dairy foods is because as we were awaiting the receiving of the Torah, we didn't know the rules. We knew that there were going to be all kinds of rules about eating, waiting between milk and meat, the shechting, the slaughtering of animals in certain ways to make it kosher. We didn't know about the rules, so we eat dairy foods only to, certainly among Ashkenazim, to honor that and not to mess up the rules. The other thing is that on Shavuos, we engage in all-night study. This is, of course, a custom, unless you're tired like me. But you engage in all-night custom. We study all night. And the reason for that is because when Moses went up the mountain and he came down, the Jewish people had calculated incorrectly. They thought he was on the 40th day when he came down. They thought it was the 39th, and he came down with the 2 tablets and found all of Bnei Yisrael sleeping, the children of Israel sleeping. So indeed, we stay up all night to make sure that we do not miss this pivotal event. So with some other customs, let me just come and see, eating dairy, staying up all night. But these are not really, these are all very cute. These are all very nice. They're called minchagim. They are customs, but it's not about the law. For example, the rabbis ordained that the Seder night would be a recreation of the experience of our exodus from Egypt. So the same thing is true of Sukkot. Here we go and we live in booths for 8 days to experience what it was like to leave Egypt and live in the Midbar, in the desert. However, it's very difficult to recreate Shavuos because, I don't know about you, but most of us are not farmers. And the agricultural aspect of the holiday doesn't really speak to us. The moment of revelation was a one-time event. It wasn't prevalent living in a desert. It wasn't prevalent living under the whips of Egyptian. It was this one-time event. Such awe, such grandeur. How can we recapture this again? So how is one, frankly, supposed to view and commemorate this great biblical holiday? I posted on the Facebook that we called it that we became a nation. The Torah actually describes the day of the granting of the Torah to Israel in the statement, today you will have become a nation. Judaism is not just a religion, but it's a national entity. Like all nations, it has rules for citizenship, residence, has rules for behavior. The key, I think, and help me with this if you think I'm wrong, the key to understanding and appreciating our history, our life, our customs throughout the ages, it actually lies in this realization that we're telling the story of a nation. We're telling the story of a people. We're not merely a conglomeration of physical and theological ideas. History has shown us very, very clearly that Jews who abandon the idea of nationhood and merely see Judaism, I am moving something here, and merely see Judaism as just a bunch of holidays and customs and bagels and lox, we eventually assimilate. We'll eventually disappear from that Jewish scene. You know, I was thinking about this week as I reconnected to my children and my grandchildren, and I thought to myself, what have I created? What's my role? And how does this connect to Shavuos? I mean, who are we as parents, as grandparents, as neighbors? Who are we if we aren't teachers? I learned, as I was learning to become a life coach, and I refer to this quite often, that I say, are we human doings or are we human beings? I thought, well, you don't see grandchildren, you don't see children for 2 months. How do we impact this moment? What can I teach? What can I say? What meaningful experiences can we share to cement and reconnect? And then it dawned on me that after 2 months sitting in a park together, all of us in various stages of various levels of maskingness, what we did was we sat and we laughed. And all we did was I was, they were. After 2 months of isolation, they didn't need to be lectured to. They didn't need books read. They needed to tell jokes. They needed to be saucy. They needed to ask questions, be inquisitive, be irrefutably Jewish. I realized that all of us, the children, the parents, we're all in a process. I'm in a process. We all are. Shavuos connects us to the fact that we belong to one nation. We're bound together as Jews listening into this program. We're scattered throughout the world. We're scattered geographically. In so many ways, we're so distant from each other. But by remembering our nationhood, we come to remember every moment of our day. We remember Sinai. And we realize that the Torah, only the Torah, is the source of our being a nation. It's not bagels and lox, and it's not Larry David. There's a famous statement of Saadia Gaon that we are a nation only by virtue of our Torah. This emphasizes the truism to us. This is a holiday, this Shavuos. It takes upon itself this mantle of nationhood. We're not commemorating an event. We're immersed. It's the mikvah, the spiritual waters of our very essence. You know, it's very ironic in the extreme that this great holiday is almost forgotten in much of the Jewish world, especially true for Jews living in the diaspora. It's such an honor to be able to share this to you, that only in the observant Jewish world does it get its due. indeed, this might be a symptom of loosening this concept of nationhood, but that we can reconnect to. Shavuos revitalizes Jewish nationhood. It has to be clear that without having a healthy and traditional narrative, understanding, lighting Shabbos candles, remembering who we are at our core, or we say bimakor, at our essence, and sharing our unique history, that it's almost impossible without that to understand the true nature of the events that are surrounding us today. Every nation in the world has its unifying, has its sort of its backbone, who it is, a narrative story of how it came to be. It's the reason that we have flags, we have marching, we have anthems. I love that stuff, the pomp, the circumstances, the bugles. These are indeed building blocks creating a nationhood. But the main building block of the Jewish nation and connection is Torah. The holiday of Shavuos is very special. And when we come back, we're actually going to go into the source where it came from. We're going to talk about why it's so special to women and why it's worth observing. See you on the other side.
The Tamar Yona Show.
Tamar? She's sassy.
She's smart.
She's funny.
But she's also a real Jewish mother.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tamar Yona. And yes, I can be all of those things. But at Israel News Talk Radio, I'm here to bring you the news stories and guests that you may not hear anywhere else. Join me live on air Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays for the most unique and bold talk radio in Israel.
The Tamar Yona Show.
Okay, this is Andrea Simondov. Pull up a chair. We are so back. Okay, you can't hear it because you're part of the show. You're part of my whole life here. I'm having some technical issues here, but I'm having a good time. I hope you're hearing me well. And I forgot to say good morning. It's like the old romper room. Anybody in America knows what romper room was. Okay, mirror, mirror on the wall. So I want to say hello, good evening to my friends in the States, U.S., Israel, the UK, Canada, Germany. Italy is listening in. Hope you're feeling better, Italy. Australia, Norway, France, and the Virgin Islands. Haven't heard from you guys in a while. Okay, you know what? What is this Shavuos thing? I must. Now, wait a second. I had this I'm just reaching over here. I forgot this really good quote. Actually, this was sent to me this week by the director of our station, Tamar Yona. I've seen this before, but it really bears repeating. When one asks God for answers, he answers in one of three ways. He either answers yes, he answers not yet, or he answers, I have something better planned for you. Just a thought. Okay, here we go. So, very funny. Those of you who know me know that I abhor the term feminist, okay? Do not like it. And, however, Shavuos is happy. This is what I call the not for women only holiday, not for women. And I would say to you, hey guys, do you really like a good story? A story of epic proportions. Let's just see 1 second. We're getting very dramatic now. I told you I'm having these problems with my computer. I want to see who's in the chat room. Just got in here. Hello. Oh, Hanala. All right. Okay. Here we go. So anyway, think about it. I'm a big reader. I love a good story. I love a good novel. So here you have a saga in which the female protagonist protagonist. She triumphs in the face of adversity. She goes up against her enemies. She faces shame. Listen to me. Judith Krantz, Daniel Steele, I don't care who they are. Naomi Reagan, they can't get close to this. The Book of Ruth, if you love a good drama, a good epic, this is going to quench your literary thirst. You can't make up this stuff. It's a compelling story. You know, in the days of the Talmud, Megillah Ruth, the Book of Ruth, it was divided in half, with each part was read. I need to share this with you because I have to review this each year. Each half was read at the conclusion on each of the 2 days of the Shavuos. Later on, the custom, it changed, and it became universally accepted to read it all at once on the second morning of Shavuos. Okay, so like, what does this story have to do with the holiday of Atzeret, you know, not doing menial work? Here's the story. I'm going to give you some bullet points. Take notes. Write to me, Andrea at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and I'll actually send you the bullet points, I think 6 or 7. Megillah Ruth, A, reminds us that knowing Torah, the knowledge of Torah, is attained through hardship. It's not pulling it off the shelf the way the Greeks would want us to do. You know, pull down the, let's pull down the story of Ruth. Let's pull down the Bhagavad Gita from Italy. Let's pull down let's check out some of the chapters of the Quran. No. The Torah is gleaned by living it. A Torah that's merely read is not Torah. It's a Torah that has to be learned. Just as Ruth's conversion to Judaism happened in a very difficult course, a very difficult way, we also have to apply our due diligence in studying Torah, living the Torah. Even if some of us struggle more than others, we'll be able to acquire much more worthwhile knowledge. The story of Ruth is not ephemeral. It's a historical event, and it has great spiritual significance, which in fact it occurred at the beginning of what we call the barley season, the barley harvest. We're reminded that Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, we accepted and we received the Taryag mitzvot, the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. The numerical value in the letters of Ruth, interesting, come to 606. I know we have a lot of not Jewish listeners who are fascinated by Judaism, by Torah study. I've gotten letters from some of you who claim to be Noahides. 606 in Gematria, the letters that the name Ruth totals, these are the number of mitzvot that she accepted after her conversion, okay? And now add the seven mitzvot of the 7 commandments of Bnei Noach, the Noahides, which she had kept prior to her conversion. Altogether, it's the number of commandments. Now, I slow down when I talk about this because I get very, very emotional, and it's really shaky territory. Just as Ruth was a convert, and she became the mother of Israel's royal family, King David was actually descended from her. We, the children of Israel, all of us, we were non-Jews when we accepted the Torah at the foot of Sinai. Converts hold a very special role in our Masorah, in our tradition. While in Egypt, the children of Israel were not circumcised. We underwent the process of conversion, including circumcision and ritual immersion, the laws of mikvah, the ritual bath. When we received the Torah, every one of us was a convert. This Megillah, this story, outlines the genealogy of King David, who was a descendant of Ruth. David was born, and he also died on Shavuos. The Psalms of David, the Tehillim that we read, these are evidence of his great faith and love of God. Therefore, on the Yortzeit, the commemoration of the death of David, it is befitting to read about Ruth. We also read in the story of Ruth that our acceptance of the Torah is that we accepted both the written Torah and the oral Torah. It is all one Torah. We know this, that, one other thing I must get in here because I'm scared we're going to run out of time. We know that the oral Torah clarifies the written. A Moabite, she was from the tribe of Moab. You know, when you talk about a lack of modesty, the word Moab, when we say Ruth was a Moabite, the word Moab means from my father. Just the name of their tribe screams that they are the products of an incestuous relationship. It is absolutely shocking. And here you have Ruth. When a non-Jew seeks to convert, he or she is taught the laws of tzedakah. The convert has to accept all the laws without questioning them. In a sense, they're far more holy because a Jew is born to Judaism, and even a Jew that breaks every law of the Torah is still a Jew, whereas the convert must absolutely accept the laws. All right. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time, and I want to just share this. The story of Ruth and Naomi is a special story about women. It is a special story about love. You know, the story of daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, that's always like the biggest joke, certainly the Catskills jokes. They hate each other. Naomi doesn't want her daughters-in-law to come with her. She knows they're going to be mocked. She knows they're going to be teased. She knows they're going to be ridiculed. Orpah accepts this. Her daughter-in-law, Orpah, gives her mother-in-law a kiss, a neshika, which actually is the root of the word knife. Okay, a kiss can be taken two ways. A kiss can be very loving, but a kiss can also be a weapon. And she says, bye-bye, I'm out of here, going back to her people. Whereas Ruth says, your people are my people, your Torah is my Torah, your God is my God. And Naomi cannot turn her away. Now, as I said, she was born, Ruth, of this incestuous relationship between Lot and his daughter. And that terrible rift between Abraham and Lot is only healed generations later through this incredible union of Ruth and Boaz. From Ruth, we learn what is modesty, what is goodness, the epitome of what is right for a Jewish woman. It is said that Ruth, that Ruth is in some ways even greater than Abraham. Abraham had to be told by God, Lech lecha, go. Ruth returned of her own free will. Like Naomi, Ruth was beautiful. She was strong. She converted at a time when it was not accepted. She really is everything wonderful. She is what we call a balat chesed, a woman of loving kindness, a princess of royalty, and one who never compromised her dignity. When we come back, more on Holy Shavuos.
In a time where feelings have become fact, where rational thought and common sense has disappeared, one man stands above it all.
I'm Howie Sobiker, your political hitman.
Political Hitman airs every Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. North American time, 7 a.m. Israeli time, only on Israel News Talk Radio.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
and me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Okay, Andrea Simintov, pull up a chair. We are so back. Listen, it's very funny. It was brought to my attention during the break that it's interesting because very often I do politics. I'm always bringing up news of the day. And I have to tell you, I'm almost teary. Shavuos is too important. Crazy. So many of us are only hearing about it for the first time. But it is just too important to mess up with the filth. Well, I'm going to talk about anti-Semitism. Oh, please. All right. So just as we wind down to the last segment, there's a few things I just must share with you because I'm teary. I'm so excited. It's very different because when you live in Jerusalem, in the heart of Jerusalem, Shavuos has always been kind of identified with, as I said, young people walking in the street all night long. In the dead of night, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, they walk to the kotel to all-night study sessions, women's sessions, men's sessions, couple sessions, children's sessions. It's a lot of fun. It's very, very lively. And yet, we've become very insulated this year because of the change, what COVID-19 has done to our world. So it's not going to be the all-night walking. It's going to be a very different kind of Shavuos, just as this year's Passover, was very different for us. It was more internal than external. It was very, very nice. Anyway, some things we need to finish up. The study of Ruth and Naomi is absolutely inspirational to everyone. But again, I personalize it. In case you didn't notice, I'm a woman. And I'm a woman. Thank God, I'm married. I have it's a very insular, very complete Jewish life. And yet I think across the hall to my lovely neighbor, Adina, who was recently widowed. And it reminds me of the status of to be a widow in a world that celebrates marriage and partnership. So here we meet Naomi. She's actually a shadow of a woman. This is not a time where you went to university and you were a supporting single mother. A woman alone is absolutely bereft. And she's bereft of husband. She's bereft of children. She's going home to her former home with these 2 Moabite daughters-in-law. And it's really quite humiliating. So who is Naomi? We have these names, these Bible names. Naomi was a devoted mother who, after the death of her sons, she spent the rest of her life redeeming them, that their names should not be erased from this world. She was so wise. She was insightful with her daughters-in-law. Naomi, different from many of us. Okay, she knew when to let go. She also knew when to persist. She was educated. She was knowledgeable. And when I remember at the beginning of the show, I talk about human doing and human being. With her beauty, with her grace, she taught both Ruth and Orpah how to establish a Jewish home. It was Naomi who converted Ruth. She was a survivor. She was scorned. And she was sensitive. She knew about the barbs. She knew about the stares. She knew about the indifference as she returned to Bethlehem. She was proud. She was dignified. Indeed, she walked with God. She didn't ask her relatives for support. But most of all, who is Naomi? She's what we call a Ba'alat Chesed, a woman of loving kindness. She dealt kindly in her dealings with her family, in her dealings with her dead sons, and indeed in her dealings with Ruth. beautiful, strong, both of them incredible women. All right, so I think we've covered the bases on who she is. All right, so now let's get back to how wacky it is to be Jewish. You know, here we have this national spiritual holiday, Shavuos, that many of you listening in have never even heard of. And the way the Torah says, the day we become a nation. So let's see. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I get this all in here. All right. So in our holiday prayers, we don't have temple service. And so the granting of the Torah, indeed, it is the centerpiece. But how do we have this? You know, really, there's no way for a human being to commemorate, to celebrate the most momentous occasion in all of civilization. Whether or not one is an observer of Torah, this is it, baby. The human heart and spirit, it searches for ways to define what is beyond definition, to experience what is beyond spiritual. It really is the meaning of eternal. This is the role, the custom, what custom and tradition brings to Jewish life. Logic, reality. I often think about the laws of kashrut, keeping kosher. There's no logic to it. There's no logic to it, especially in a world where people are starving. Why should I wait a certain amount of time? Because the blueprint says, because rationality and law alone cannot bring this down to future generations who are not physically present on that day of revelation at Sinai. I must share this with you. Sometimes I'm getting away from my notes a minute. Sometimes when I'm having a problem with somebody and I come up with a natural human emotion, I say, I really dislike this person. Oh, I can't stand her. Oh, he's impossible. Oh, they're difficult. Oh, I don't want them out of my orbit. I'm reminded that at Sinai, we stood shoulder to shoulder. If we think we know what silence is, imagine the silence of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people standing shoulder to shoulder, deeply caring about one another. This is a phenomenal memory. It's an internal memory. And remember that the next time you're having a difficult moment with somebody. Custom. Custom speaks to our souls. The law is what speaks to our minds. The customs of Shavuos, these are the conduits to our past. The customs bring us to that great holy day, that turning point in all of civilization. It's the customs that conduct us to our future and the realization of the goals that Sinai presented before us. These are why customs are so long-lasting and tenacious. On the other hand, custom alone cannot do the job of transmitting Torah from generation to generation. If one is not observant and your children say, Mommy, Daddy, why do we do this? But we don't know because we only know about the cheesecake, because we only know about the spinning of the dreidel, because we only know about the manishtana or the breaking of the matzah or the 4 glasses. We're overemphasizing the custom and we're ignoring the law and the rationality. Indeed, custom can make us fall victim to superstition and false kinds of spirituality. These custom alone distorts the day of Sinai. So the Torah demands a sense of balance, perspective from us in every generation. And indeed, every individual Jew, we have to find our balance and equilibrium in our religious life. You know, in recent years, the recent century, terrible events have happened. Incredible, wonderful events. Everything that has happened, unbelievable. Who would have believed that coronavirus would have been the narrative of our world? It's a science fiction film. The Holocaust could never happen, but it did. Shavuos, with its combination of custom and law, spirit, food, natural beauty, scholarship at its deepest, is a day that helps us recognize, balance our feet, achieve a security and balance so necessary to be a true Jew, to be a loyal Jew, to be an observant Jew and a committed Jew. This is the test of our lives. Shavuos, like all the other holidays, reminds us that a good life, a Jewish life, it does indeed require sacrifice. It requires focus. There are terrible realities in Jewish history. We know that: pogroms, Holocaust, exiles, persecution. But Shavuos presents an opportunity for every one of us, indeed, today, to convert somehow, to bring ourselves closer to God. For every individual, this is accomplished according to a different plan, embracing more Torah, more of the statutes, being more conscientious in observing the commandments, taking personal account where we can improve ourselves, to be a little bit more, to cultivate a little more Ruth within ourselves. We only have to try to attempt to return to Torah within the measure, the eye of a needle, and God will open this small space and bring us to a greater realm of return. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
Howdy, this is Rita from League City, Texas, now living in Israel. And though my heart may have belonged to Texas, it now belongs to Israel and all the fantastic show hosts at Israel News Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Michael Solomon from Kiryat Arba, Israel. And why do I love listening to Israel News Talk Radio? Because I love listening to the interesting interviews they do and their news reporting that most other media sources don't cover.
Hey, this is Nicoleko from Malmö, Sweden. It gets pretty cold here in Sweden, so I love cuddling up with a warm cup of tea while I listen to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey everybody, this is Frank Morris from Tennessee. Me and my dog Buster really love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.